In this video presentation, we're going to continue our discussion of the Civil Rights Movement. This video presentation is called Violence and Determination, and it's about the struggles and gains that continue as the Civil Rights Movement progresses. Information on this presentation can be found in Chapter 23, Sections 2 and 3 of your orange textbook. We're going to be talking about Goal 11, Objectives 2 and 6. Objective 2 is trace the major events of the Civil Rights Movement, and Objective 6 is assess consequences of political events, actions, and reactions. Our essential questions are: how did the Civil Rights Movement gain ground in the 1960s, and by what means? And what successes did the Civil Rights Movement have after 1964? In 1960, the Supreme Court ordered that bus station facilities for interstate travelers must be open to all passengers, but the ruling was not enforced. So, as it was, buses continued to be essentially segregated. CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, sent a group of Freedom Riders on a bus trip through the South to draw attention to this situation. Mobs who were angry at the Freedom Riders because they used white-only facilities actually firebombed a bus in Anniston, Alabama, and then attacked riders with baseball bats and metal pipes later in Birmingham. This map shows the Freedom Rides, which took place in 1961, going from Washington, D.C. through Richmond, Greensboro, Rock Hill, South Carolina, Atlanta, then Birmingham. Also, another bus came from Nashville, going down to Montgomery, and then on to Jackson, Mississippi. And you can see at each one of those locations that are numbered there, they had incidents. Also, by 1960, the NAACP began to attack segregation in colleges and universities. Of course, we'd had Brown versus Board of Education, which integrated public schools. Now they began to work on colleges and universities. So in 1961, a court order required the University of Georgia to admit 2 African American students, Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes. Both managed to graduate, although it was a difficult process, in 1963. Then, in 1962, James Meredith tried to enroll at the University of Mississippi. Notice that these are southern universities where segregation is most ingrained. Meredith arrived on campus with 500 federal marshals, and he was met by 2,500 violent protesters. If you can imagine that many people that upset about a black man coming to go to school. President Kennedy actually went on national television to announce that he was sending in the troops. And the troops managed to end the protest, but hundreds had been injured and actually 2 people were killed in the riots. A small force of marshals remained to protect Meredith until he graduated in 1963. Then, in 1963, George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, physically blocked students Vivian Malone and James Hood from enrolling at the University of Alabama. So despite federal intervention, segregation and discrimination continued in many universities in the South. These are photographs. The top photograph there is James Meredith as he's escorted by federal marshals going to the University of Mississippi. In the bottom photograph, this was later, he was actually on a march, protested, a civil rights march, and he was shot during the march. But he was able to continue, went on to march all the way to Jackson, Mississippi after being treated for his wounds. Also, Medgar Evers, a civil rights organizer, was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in 1963. So you can see 1963, 1964 was really a peak in the violence that occurred as a result of the civil rights movement. Medgar Evers supported James Meredith in his efforts to get through the University of Mississippi. Also in 1963, Martin Luther King organized a huge political rally on the Washington Mall. He delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech here at the Lincoln Memorial, and this was the largest civil rights demonstration that's ever been held in the United States. You can see it was attended by hundreds and thousands of people. It was actually attended by many more people than they'd originally planned on, and various celebrities, musicians performed at the march as well, so that drew additional crowds. A year later, in 1964, finally, the Civil Rights Act was passed. This was a landmark legislation really pushed by Kennedy, which outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Of course, some Southerners in Congress fought hard to kill this bill, including Strom Thurmond, who filibustered for 24 hours in an effort to kill this bill. However, President Johnson supported the passage of a strong civil rights bill, sort of in honor of President Kennedy and all his work towards civil rights. But he also believed very strongly in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was finally passed. The law banned discrimination in employment and also in public accommodations.